an author, and I'm gonna get right into it. What made you become a motivational speaker?
Well, what I found out from my own past experience is that a lot of people are struggling with a lot of different things. I never wanted to be a motivational speaker, actually. But what I found out, from my own personal experience, I just wanted to help people in a greater way because, for my own self, I knew I was struggling with some things. I said, you know what, I always wanted to help people. Yeah. And so I've always heard of Les Brown, and I heard of the greats, Eric Thomas, Zig Ziglar, those people. And so I said, you know what, I would like to do this. I didn't know you could do this for a career or, as a business. So I said, you know what, wow, I would love to break into that type of industry and make that type of impact. So that's why I made the decision.
When you started this book, what was your vision?
The whole vision of the book, I always give credit to God for the book, but the book itself, it really was touched me because I found that most people don't know how to handle adversity. So I said to myself, you know what is it that I can say? And so I always had a dream of writing a book. That's my reason. So what I did was, I said, you know what, write out some questions, wrote it in the format. But I didn't think it was going to be a good book. But then until different events started to happen again and again and again, and suicide started to run so rapid, I said, you know what, I have to do something. Right. So that's why I titled the book, Move Your Mountain. Right. There's a quote that I have that says, analogy of our problems really being like a mountain. Yeah. And so I said, you know what, that's what I'm going to title it, Move Your Mountain. It's not necessarily a mountain that we're moving, it's the problems, the adversities that we go through. Remember the size of a mountain. And so that's how I titled the book, Move Your Mountain.
And you speak a lot about your life experience in your book, and we can get more into that in a second. Okay. But what gave you the strength to share all those experiences in such detail?
What happened was, I never forget. I know I wanted to speak for so many years, and I was so paralyzed, and I told myself, I don't think I'm about to be able to speak. And I hear my story, at the age I was about 19. And so, I never forget I was at the age of about 21, 22. I went to a Les Brown's conference, and I shared a glimpse of their story, and they was like, oh. And I said, she's like, wow, that story is powerful. He said, you have a really deep story. I said, I didn't think it was that good. And they were saying to me, your story is really good, and people need to hear it.
Right.
I said, So I wrestled with it back and forth. And I started telling some people, wow. I said, you know what, maybe I give this thing a shot.
Right.
So that's what made me wrote the book is in grave detail. I just really wanted to be not just very transparent and authentic. I didn't want to make myself seem like, oh, I'm this giant. No. Yeah. I'm telling you and showing you like those real feelings and basically explaining those moments I had at the time. Right. So that's what that makes me.
Absolutely. And without giving too much of the book away, could you describe your relationship with your dad?
Right now, with the relationship with my dad, it's much better than it was in the past. I don't think because of his character and his decisions and who he is as an individual, I will ever be able to grow as close as I was to my mom. Like, the magnitude I was with my mom. Right. But as far as him, we do have a relationship. That's something I can't say.
I understand. So this one gets a little bit deeper about your dad. You also describe your dad's usage of alcohol. Right. Do you feel like that's a generational curse that you have to break?
For my personal stuff, I did feel like that was a personal generational curse, because his father was alcoholic, he was abusive. My dad was alcoholic, he was abusive. And I said to myself, I can't do this. Those are some things that I just cannot do. So that I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do anything, but I eat. As you can see.
Right.
But more importantly, as far as, I'm totally against domestic violence.
Right. 1,000%. There was a point in the book where you made a choice to cut off ties with your father, not only your father, but the entire side of his family. How did that choice affect you? And do you still stick with that choice to this day?
It's funny you say that. Slowly I've been able to, get the pieces back together. But as far as everything, the fact that it was something that really it knocked the wind out of me. domestic violence, and most people will find that it creates a division. One group will say they will understand and believe you. The other group won't necessarily understand it. And so for me per se, and I knew the type of person my father was, he never confessed his faults, but he always made the other person look like the victim. That's a behavior that most people who are abusers have. They never confess to the things. They always blame it on the other person. And so what happened was, if you're not in a situation, it paints a picture about the person that you don't even know, and that person can't even defend themselves. And so what I found that during the midst of it, I remember this is when we went to court and my father assaulted my mother, and I said to myself, I'm not dealing with this anymore, and I called the police. And when we was in court, we literally could see the divide. I had my mother and my mother and I was on one side, and his family and him was on the other side. And I said, you know what? I'm just not gonna do it. I said, I'm not dealing with you, and I'm not dealing with them anymore. Now, they didn't have anything to do with it, but I perceived that they sided with him. So I just said, you know what? I'm not dealing with that. Right. Now at this time here, there's still some hurt there because, you know, I'm young, I'm experiencing it, I'm going through that. There's still a little pain there, but it's slowly getting better and better. But I'm still trying. Well, I'm not really trying, but I'm gonna put it this way: I do work my way into trying to speak and be important.
I was going to say, you know, to piggyback off this last question, you kind of did that yourself. Just kind of, once again, talking about the anger and the bitterness, what did you do to help you deal with that emotion?
Well, the thing is, one time, it's a thing that a lot of us suppress. We don't really want to come to agreements with it, and more importantly, we don't want to admit that we are there. And so what happened was, for me, I did go to counseling, but unfortunately, you know, I didn't really express and tell exactly what was going on with me because of pride, and I didn't want to be judged and things like that. And so what I did for many years, I held on to it. There's a quote by Les Brown. He said, "Let go or be dragged." And what it did for years, it began to drag me down, and drag me down, and drag me down, and drag me down. I never forget. My wife had told me, she said, "Quentel," she said, "you're a good person." She said, "But you gotta understand, you gotta forgive your father, you gotta let all this stuff go." And I said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "I left forgiving him."
Right.
Forgiving him. She said, "You haven't forgiven him." And he said, "You wanna know how I know?" I said, "You don't call him, you don't talk to him. Every time I turn around, your attitude changes as soon as he talked to me." I said, and you know, I was guilty by association. I knew.
Right.
And I said to myself, she's right. Because what happened was, whenever you begin to hold on to that anger in business, it doesn't affect the other person. It controls you, and it affected different areas. And people will say, for example, you're so aggressive, you're mean, you're hot-tempered, you just don't know how to control yourself at times. But because of that past, because of everything that I went through, it pretty much destroyed me in a way. And so what I did was, I just had to be honest with myself. I had to do some praying. I had to get in the Word. More importantly, I had to really acknowledge where I was at. And so what I did from at that point was, my wife had showed me a movie. And she said, "I want you to show you this movie. It was If I Can Only Imagine." And I saw that movie and I broke down and I cried the entire movie because I felt just like it. That's kind of similar to the situation that I went through. Except his mom left, my mother stayed. And so from that point on, I called my father, I told him, I said, "I need to talk to you." And he said, what do you need to talk to me about? I said, "Yeah, I just need to talk. I talked to you on the phone." Pull up and get there. I just drove around for a little bit, picked him up, drove around for a little bit, and then we went just talking. I said, "Dad, I know I haven't been the best, but I said, I want to let you know for this past, I forgive you for all the stuff." And it took courage, but this is what he said. He said, "Time heals all wounds." I didn't get an apology. I didn't get anything. But more importantly, I just accepted it for what it was, and I moved on with my life. And from that day, I was free. And that's what that's what I really had to do. I didn't give it the root.
And it's crazy that you bring up how he didn't apologize, because I'm at a time in my life where I feel like I'm going through a lot of stuff, and people do a lot of stuff to you. Even if you call them out on it,
right,
even if you say this is what
have to understand, being that I'm a Christian, Christ requires us to forgive. And we have to love people that do not love us. It's not easy, it's not challenging. But more importantly, me being a Christian, more important, I had to understand that me holding on isn't hurting him. It's hurting me. It's hurting my relationship. It's hurting my life. It's hindering my past. And if I was willing to grow, and if I'm going to do what it is that I said I'm going to do, I have to let this thing go. As I said before, let go or be dragged. If you do not let it go, it will continue to drag you down. And so you have to understand is that it's not for them. It's for you. So most times they go, oh, but they didn't, oh no, that's fine. It's for you. You have to understand that you are important. And so that's the main thing I have to really say with them. I understand that they may not say anything, and it's a lot of people that will not apologize exactly what they did, will blame you, forgive them, let it go, drop it. Now it takes work.
Right, that's what I'm about to say.
It's not something that's gonna happen overnight. Right. You're gonna gradually learn how to work through it, and as you begin to work through it and work through it and work through it and work through it, it'll get better and easier, and then you'll be able to move to a place where you won't get so offended over every single thing. You won't be so sensitive to every single thing. And so that's pretty much how you have a look at that.
In the book, you did talk about, you already talked about your counselors.
Yes.
Name is Cook. And can you just kind of elaborate her impact on your life at that time?
I thank God for Miss Cook. I'm going to be honest with you. Because what happened was, as I talk about in the book, serving as a light in a dark time. At that point in my time, I had graduated from high school and I went to college, but I was dealing with so much. This was a transition. I didn't realize how much my situation really affected me. But what Miss Cook did, she just really broke down adversity in this room. When I just said, why did I have to go through all of this? And I just felt like I was the only one going through something, and it's just why me, why this, why that, why this. But she shared with me something that was very pivotal. Because I was asking, I said, Miss Cook, why does it seem like that? And I'm the only one with all these problems. Nobody else does. But she said something that changed my perspective. She said, everybody's going through something, but people have a way of packaging. People have a way of pretending and put it in a way that you wouldn't even know. And so it was a game changer for me. Because I didn't feel like, oh, it isn't just me going through something. Everybody else going through something. And so that was a really game changer for me. And more importantly, she was able to help me get through some clarity. And when I mean I was at a dark time, I was at an all-time low.
You also described the time when you had to depart from the job due to a disagreement with your supervisor. Did you walk through that experience?
So let's go back and forth. I never forget it was a day it was a month of April a few years back. I had got fired from my job at ECU because what happened was supervisors, I didn't agree with supervisors. The supervisors, the way they would do certain things. I was feuding with a couple of coworkers due to some things that was going on with the job, and overall I just found myself really hating this job. And so I ended up getting fired.
Right.
And the reason I got fired is really because when I look back of it, it was because I was so angry. I was so aggressive. I was so confrontational. I wasn't the kind of person to say, hey, look, I was the type of person to get ready to get in your face. Right. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah. I was the kind of person that would yell at you and throw things and do those type of things and lash out and leave my desk type of person because of that anger and bitterness and that unforgiveness that pretty much consumed my heart. And so that ultimately led to me getting departed from that position.
Absolutely. You also said in the book, life provides you with, let me start. You also said in the book, challenges provide us room for growth. Right. So my question is, outside of everything we can read in the book, what would you say is a challenge that happened in your life that provided you a chance for growth?
I think a lot of times what we have to reframe our perspective about adversity. When we hear adversity, we think, oh Lord, why is this happening to me? And see, what it does is there's a quote that says that adversity introduces a man to himself. What you find out is you find out who you are, what you're made of. And so what I look at in my life, and I look at how I was able to overcome suicide, those suicidal thoughts. How was I able to, overcome domestic violence? Because the statistics show that I shouldn't be here. Studies show, statistics show that I should be dead. More importantly, that I should be on drugs and those different things. And so what it did with that situation, unfortunately it was an adverse situation, but what it did for me, it made me stronger, and it made me build character, it made me to mold into this amazing person. Because if you met me, you would know I wouldn't do that unless I told you. And so what I found out with myself is that there's strength in that. Even though it was hard, even though it was tough, but you don't know how strong you are until you get tested. Let's think about a single mother. There's a great number of single mothers out here. But the one thing about that single mother, and think about my mom, and she was a single mother, she always provided. There was no room for say, oh, I can't, you won't have this or you won't have. She always provided. And I think that's a thing, that's a common element as I talk about release the inner champion in you. There's something that happens when you go through adversity that unlocks something in you, and you say, I got to get through this. You don't really know how strong you are until you face an adverse situation. Now for anger and aggression, there's different levels and different people and different triggers. For me, I knew it's for me. I don't like for people to feel like they can run over top. That's something I've always had, because in my past, my father would talk to me and degrade me. And so I would develop a no-nonsense type of attitude, a no-nonsense type of personality. And so that carried over and that transferred over to my adult life. So those were some different things I had to deal with. But as far as the anger, number one, I get to the root of what really is it really that important? Number one, because a lot of times we find ourselves just like the wind. If you're mad, you're blowing over here, you're blowing over here, you're blowing over here. Any and everything is getting you upset. It's just life just controlling you like a puppet. And so I found that I have to get to the root. What is the root? Why am I really, really mad? Why should I really be mad about this? Is it gonna matter 5-10 years from now? If it's not, whoop, really don't have to understand it. But more importantly, you have to get to the root. Because a lot of times when we go through things, it makes a deposit. It plants a seed in us that you don't know is there, and it just comes up, and that's why some people have different levels of anger. And I think that's what a lot of times with my father is that he has so much stuff going on in his childhood and his life. It just comes all out.
And okay, so you also say in the book that life is a constant fight. And as you said before, you spoke about the inner champion.
Right.
And when we as people realize that we tap into, as you call our inner champion, can you explain what that inner champion is?
The reason I say there's an inner champion, because see, the thing is, a lot of people don't know there's a champion inside of them that they don't know. Let's think about it. As I gave the analogy of a single mother and they have kids, that mother would do everything she can to provide for that child. That child will never go without. And the same thing happens to us when our back is against the wall. When we're placed in a situation that we don't look like, we know that we got to make this thing happen. Sink or swim. It's do or die. It gets us to a point where we have no choice to be resilient. We have no choice to sit up there and get through this challenge. I think more importantly, it gets triggered for most people. Because when you really look at the odds, it's so
crazy.
It gets to be so overwhelming, but those odds can give you the fuel and say, I have no reason to get through the situation. And I think that when you place in those odds, that unlocks that inner champion inside of you.
Another tip you gave us in the book is you say challenges also allow for a season of separation for elevation.
Correct.
Can you explain that to
I love that quote. It's a quote. I was listening to a podcast by Les Brown. It was amazing. It was called the Design Your Life Radio Show, and he said it was a quote by Mother Teresa. He said, I thought I had the handle on life until the handle broke. And then he said this. He said, many times when we cry out to God, only to find out that it's only God that's doing the shaking.
Right.
Because see, what happens is, when I think about my life and my past, I had to be separated from a lot of people. When we go through certain things, they're gonna do. It's really more importantly showing you who you are and showing what people are really made of. Because when you go through a situation, we all have had situations, but we have people who were supposed to be there, but wasn't there. If you understand what I'm saying. And so what it does is, through the situation, depending on what it is, it begins to separate yourself from other people. You look at life different. Like for myself, I look at life totally different from everybody else. And so what it does is, through that separation, it brings you up to another level. And I think that we have to understand with adversity, it is hard, it is difficult, but more importantly, there's power in it. There's something that lies in it. We're not going through things for no reason. If we all just understood the power in adversity, we wouldn't have EWL programs. We wouldn't have these Red Cross ministries. We wouldn't have a lot of these programs that's going on today if it wasn't for adversity.
I also see you speak on low moments in the book where you kind of brought this up earlier about suicide.
Right.
How did you get through that dark place?
Oh boy, I can honestly say it was but the main bulk of it really was finding somebody who is a light in your darkness. The reason why I say that, because in your life, you're gonna have some dark moments, and it seems like you're never gonna get through it. But you're gonna have people who are gonna speak words of encouragement, people that's really gonna need to hold your hand through it, because I promise you, you're not gonna be able to get through this thing by yourself. And I do not credit. I give my credit to God. I give my credit to family and friends. More importantly, my uncle. And because it was such a terrible time for me. And more importantly, you have to understand why you must get through it. That's very key. Finding people who are enlightening your dark times and understanding why you must get through it. And so once you align yourself with those two things, you become unstoppable. Because you have people depending on you. I can't take my life now because this is going on. I have people depending on me. And see, what that does is it keeps you grounded. It keeps you strong. And more importantly, it keeps you resilient and unlocking that champion that resides you. Because you know, I got no choice to get through this.
Right. It's the only option.
Right.
I'm glad you brought up your uncle, because you said that he was how'd you say, the light of the
He was my light in my dark times. He was pretty much the anchor that was in there.
So what did he do to win your trust for being in that position?
Well, my uncle and I, we always had a great relationship. My uncle Lee, Willie Lee Cannon. But what happened for him, he understood what was going on, because, as I said before, my grandfather, which is his father, was abusive, and he knew the things that I was going through and I was on a daily basis. And so what he always tells me to do the right thing. Do the right thing. I know it's hard. Do the right thing. Do the right thing. And I will always resort to him. If sometimes, I never forget this one incident when I called him. I said, Uncle Lee, I need your help. Please come over. And my dad and I got to fight, and I punched him and bloodied his nose. And then I had my little brother in the midst of it. I'm holding my brother. My dad's attacking me as I'm holding my brother. And he's coming in the midst of it. And times where I didn't have money, my father refused to give me money for unknown reasons, and he would do things to help me. And I promise you, if it wasn't for him, I don't know if I would be there, and for other friends and family.
Towards the end of the book,
right,
you say at the age of 23. You were able to kind of at least speak to that. And I mean, you kind of spoke on this earlier, but can you go into detail as to how that relationship is? How old are you now?
I'm 24.
Okay. So how, I guess that's not too far. That's not too far, but has it gotten any better?
Overall, my dad, I've realized something that a lot of times I have to realize that in Christianity, we have this saying is that you must die so the other person can live. Not physically die, but more importantly, that you have to lay your life down so the other person can live. It's not, I'm gonna be honest with you, it's not easy. Because he says certain things, he has a certain personality, never thinks he's wrong, things like that. I accept him for who he is, and this is very important. Because I know he's not gonna change for nobody. He's not gonna change for me, he's not gonna change for mom, he's not gonna change for anybody. So I know that firsthand. But second off, I have to still love him because he's my father. And the thing is, I have to understand is that, you know, he's gonna have differences. We're gonna have differences. We're not gonna agree on everything. And that's more importantly, everybody in life. If I can't understand that concept, I'm not gonna be able to get along with anybody else. And so, right now, I can say as we speak, we have a much better relationship how it was in the past.
All right, we're about to wrap it up, but what advice would you give anybody that is like a mother who's going through domestic violence, or a son who's in your position? What is the advice that you would give them?
Number one, I want to say, keep staying strong. I won't encourage fighting at all. I would not do that. Fortunately, I did what I had to do because of my situation. But what I want to say, keep staying strong, keep plugging in, find somebody who can pour into in those times. And more importantly, if you're going through this, keep staying strong and understand your family loves you, they need you, and you have to develop the strength to lead that relationship. Now, as for a child, I want to just encourage you. I know what it's like. I've been there several different times in so many years. But I want to encourage you. You keep staying strong. You keep being positive. You keep doing what it is that you have to do, and eventually it will get better. Because they're not going to leave until they're ready to. Now, if you would like to check out my book, you can definitely go on to QuentelSmith.com. That's www.QuentelSmith.com, or you can go on Amazon or Barnes & Noble. The title of the book is called Move Your Mountain: How to Move to the Challenges of Life.